I've been in digital for about 14 years. And for the last sort of 7 years, I've worked in multi-channel businesses. So how do you make retail and digital and e-commerce work together to ultimately get the best value for the business? Well, it's a market leader. So it's interesting because although I think a lot of people know it's a US brand, it's got such a strong resonance in the UK market because for many, many years, big plants in the UK, even though people know it's a US brand, there is a very strong emotive connection with the Ford brand in the UK. Yeah, so how Ford sell vehicles, as most manufacturers do, is they have a group of franchise dealerships where they will sell vehicles. We're actually the only dealer group in the world that they happen to own. So we're the biggest Ford dealer group in the UK. So Ford are the market leaders and we represent about 20% of the market share. So we're a significant proportion of the vehicle sales in the UK. I mean, we take a steer from the retail strategy. Really what Ford focus on is, first of all, from a new car sales perspective, market share. And our job is to absolutely support them in getting to the market share ambition that they have. And they focus very much, when you look at the sort of after sales, as we call it, so the servicing side and the parts side, how we support them from that perspective. So in that sense, we're very driven by what are their ambitions and how do we make sure we support them. But then outside of that, if you look at the sort of complexity of our business, there are areas where actually we operate very, very independently. So used cars, for example, whilst we retail used Fords, we also retail non-Fords, and that's very much an area where we pretty much are masters of our destiny, if you like, where we do our own thing. Even if you look at the servicing area, we service Fords, but we also service non-Fords. So what we do in that area from a marketing and commerce perspective is very much around how do we drive more customers to come in and fill our workshop. So there are areas where we very much drive our own strategy, and there are areas where we work with Ford around what their strategic objectives are and how we support them. But if you look at areas like e-commerce, we operate completely independently. So we have our own websites, the functionality of those, what they do, how they, what business they drive is completely up to us. I kind of always simplify it and say, Ford's job is very much around convincing customers why buy Ford, and my job is, once you've decided, why come and buy from me. Well, a lot of the work we've been doing in the last sort of 20 months has been around articulating our positioning and exactly to that point, why buy from me as opposed to anybody else. And we believe that our insight is that we've got to make it easy for customers, which sounds incredibly simple, and it's a very, very simple statement to make. But actually, in a business with our complexity, if we can deliver it, it's incredibly compelling and very differentiating. So for us, what we're galvanizing our entire business behind is how do we make it easy? And that's looking at our processes, our systems, our people, our structures, our technology. So we've actually been very fortunate. We actually, and this was prior to me joining the business, we actually set up an e-commerce business. So if you're a consumer today and you want to start your journey through any of our dealer websites, you can start that journey and you can then drop into an email inquiry or you can phone us. You'll get picked up by the dealership and dealt with. But if you don't want that experience at all, you can actually buy online from us. So we have an e-commerce business. This year we will retail about 2,500 vehicles online. And these are customers who don't want that retail experience. They know the product they want, or they've bought from us online before. They know exactly what they want, and so they're happy to transact with us through that channel. And then you have a choice. You can either go and collect the vehicle through one of our dealerships, or we can deliver it to you. A big area for us is around transparency. So being really transparent with the customer. So for example, we're a sales business, we're sales targeted and sales focused. You could walk in the door today and say to me, I want to buy a new car, and I'll say, okay. Actually saying to you, if you want to take the one that we've got right here, right now in stock, there's going to be a price difference to factoring ordering it for you. So being really transparent with the customer, that starts to build trust. It's also our processes. So in the past, you'd come in, you'd have a conversation, we'd say, this is the price, and you'd go, well, can't you do anything on the price? And the person would go off to the back room and speak to this sales manager and then come back and go, well, yeah, I've spoken to my sales manager, the price has dropped. It all felt as though it was a little bit shrouded in secrecy. So how do we unblock some of those processes to actually give the customer more transparency around our processes? Because that's how you build the trust. Ultimately, we've got a lot of customers who walk through the door who know more about the product than we do because they've done so much research. So trying to hoodwink them with some kind of mystical process is not going to do us any favours in the long run. Yeah, well, and the thing is, it's difficult if you look at the people who work in our business. When you look at our salespeople, for example, a lot of them have only ever worked in automotive, and they've moved around. They might have worked for different manufacturers and all sorts, so there's subtle differences. But a lot of them have never actually bought a car themselves, because of course they've worked in automotive all their lives, so they've been given a car or they've bought it through the staff scheme, and so they've never actually gone through that process. And so saying to them, this is it's a big purchase. Yeah. Aside from buying a house, it's frequently your second biggest purchase. And it's fraught with difficulties, because a lot of customers start out going, I don't trust dealers because they're going to try and overcharge me and they're always going to try and fleece me. So you're starting from a position of mistrust. And it's a process they don't understand, and it's something that they don't do frequently. So it's not something where they'll get you to the process and therefore they'll be familiar. So it's fraught with a load of challenges for the customer that is very difficult for our people to sometimes understand. The temptation when you work in the area of technology and e-commerce and digital is you want to do the latest and the greatest, and sometimes the hardest thing is to say, no, we're not going to do that because we've got to get the basics right. But it's absolutely the right thing to do, because once we've got the basics right, we can build very, very quickly on top, and then we'll start to get some momentum behind it. But if we didn't fix the core, we're just going to end up with loads more problems further down the line. I mean, for us, the way we've thought about it is firstly, it's about people. The biggest job is how do you change how people think, and how do you help them to understand that they still have a role to play, but it's a different role. Because I think the temptation when you start to become a digital business, particularly if you've got a retail aspect, people think, oh, you're going to sack me, I'm not going to have a job tomorrow. And that's not what it's about, but the nature of their role changes. And in some ways, I think becomes far more important, because it becomes about people. Because you have fewer people who will walk through the door, but when they do, they're expecting an experience. They want to feel that emotional connection. So people become even more important, but they need to understand the role that they play. And so you've got a whole thinking about, do you need to recruit different kinds of people? Do you need to change how you induct them and how you train them in their roles? So there's a very big piece around people. There is a very big piece around process, which is the second aspect that we think is really important. What are the processes to unlock all of these silos and these structures that you have as a business? There's absolutely a piece around product. Do you have the right product for your customers? Because it may be that your product needs to change. There's absolutely the piece around technology, clearly, because inevitably any business has loads of legacy systems. So how do you take your legacy systems and either say, that's not fit for purpose, we're going to change, or layer on top the right systems that you need? And then for us, underpinning all of this is our positioning. So it's got to start from what are we trying to be, because otherwise you're going to end up buying the wrong product or having the wrong processes or investing in the wrong technology if you don't have that vision for, what's my point of difference. But I think being able to just say, how do you frame that thinking gives you something to think, to kind of galvanize your thoughts and prioritize, because it's hard. You can be tempted to do everything at once, but you'll never achieve anything. Yeah, we're a work in progress, I like to call it. We're not there yet, but as I like to say, it's never done. I don't think the task will ever be done.